Kafka on the Shore, Chapter 2. The following document, classified top secret by the US Government of Defenses, was released to the public in 1986 through the Freedom of Information Act. The document is now kept in the National Archives in Washington, D.C. and can be accessed there. The investigations were carried out under the direction of Major James P. Warren from March to April of 1946. The field of investigation in name, deleted, Country Yamanashi Prefecture, was conducted by the Second Lieutenant Robert O'Connor and Master Sergeant Harold Katamaya. The interrogation in all the interviews was Lieutenant O'Connor. Sergeant Katamaya handled the Japanese interpreting, and Private William Cohen prepared the documents. Interviews were conducted over a 12-day period in the reception room of the name deleted town hall in Yamanashi Prefecture. The following witness responded individually to the lieutenant's question: a female teacher at the deleted town, Data Country Public School, a doctor residing in the same town, two patrolmen assigned at local police precinct, six children. The append 110 and 120 maps of the area in question were provided by the Topography Institute of the Ministry of Home Affairs, U.S. Army Intelligence Section. Reported date May 12, 1946. Title: Report on the Rice Bowl Hill Incident, 1944. Document number PTYX 722 8936 745. The following is a taped interview with Setsuko Okamachi, a teacher in charge of a fourth grade B class at a public school in Country. Materials related to the interview can be accessed using the application number PTYX 722. Impressions of the interview: Lieutenant Robert Garner. Setsuko Okamachi is an attractive petite woman, intelligent and responsible. She responds to questions accurately and honestly. She still seems slightly in shock, though, from the incident. As he recently searched through her memory, she grew up tense at times, and whenever this happened, she had a tendency to speak more slower. I think it must have been after 10 in the morning when I saw a silver light far up the sky, a brilliant flash of silver. That's right, it was definitely light reflecting off something metal. That light moved very slowly in the sky from east to west. We all thought it had to be B-29. It was directly above us, so to see that we had to look up straight up. It was a clear blue sky, and the light was so bright, all we could make out was silver beryllium-like object, but he couldn't make out the shape since it was too far up. I assumed that they couldn't see either, so we weren't afraid of being attacked or having bombs suddenly rain down on us. Dropping bombs in the mountains here would be pretty pointless anyway. I figured that the plane was on its way to bomb some larger city somewhere, or maybe on its way back from a raid. So we kept on walking. All I thought was about how the light had a strange beauty to it. According to military records, no US bombers or any kind of aircraft flying over that region at the time. That is around 10 a.m. on November 7, 1944. But I clearly saw it, and so did the 16 children in my classroom. All of us thought it had to be a B-29. We all seen many formations of B-29s, and those the only kind of planes that could possibly fly that high. There's a small air base in our prefecture, and I've occasionally seen Japanese planes flying, but they were all small and could never fly as high as what I saw. Besides, the only way delirium reflects light is different from other type of metal, and the only planes made out of that are P-29s. I did think it was kind of strange, that it was a solo plane flying all by itself, not part of a formation. Were you born in that region? No, I was born in Hiroshima. I got married in 1941, and that's when I came here. My husband was a music teacher in a junior high in this prefecture. He called up in 1943 and died fighting in Luzon in June of 1945. From what I heard later, he was guarding up some ammunition dump just outside Manila, where it was hit by American shells and blew up, killing him. We have no children. Speaking of children, how many were you in charge of during that outing? 16 altogether, boys and girls. Two out of them were sick, but other than that, the entire class. 8 boys, 8 girls. 5 of them were children who were evacuated from Tokyo. We set out from the school at 9 in the morning. It was a typical school outing, so everyone carried canteens and lunches with them, but nothing in particular where we planned to study. We were just going out into the hills to gather mushroom and edible wild plants. The area around where we lived was farmland, so we weren't that badly off in terms of food, which isn't to say we had plenty to eat. There was a strict rationing system in place, and most of us were hungry all the time. The children were encouraged to hunt for food whenever they could find it. The country was at war. After all, food took priority over study. Everyone went on this kind of school outing, outdoor study sessions, as they were called. Since our school was surrounded by hills and woods, there was there's a lot of nice spots we used to go to. I think we were blessed in that sense. People in the cities were all starving. Supplies routes from Taiwan and continent had been cut off by this time, and urban areas were suffering terribly from a lack of fuel. You mentioned that 5 of your pupils had been evacuated from Tokyo. Did they get along with the local children? In my class, at least they did. The environments the two groups drew in, of course, they were completely different. No way out in the country, the other from the heart of Tokyo. They spoke differently, even dressed differently. Most of the local kids here were from poor farming families, while the majority of the Tokyo kids had fathers who worked for companies in the civil service. So I couldn't say that they really understood each other, especially in the beginning. You could sense some tension between the two. I'm not saying they bullied each other or got into fights because they didn't. What I mean is, one group didn't seem to understand what the other group was thinking, so they tend to keep it to themselves. The local kids with the other local kids, the Tokyo children, their own little group. This is only the first 2 months though. After they got along, you know how it is. When kids start playing together, they completely get absorbed by whatever they're doing. They don't care about things like that anymore. I'd like you to describe in as much as detail as you can the spot where you took the class that day. It was a hill. We were often went to an outings. It was a nice round shaped hill, an upside down bowl. We usually call it Owaniyama, note, Rice Bowl Hill. It was a short walk of the west of the school and wasn't steep at all, so anybody could climb it and at children's pace. It took somewhere around 2 hours to get to the top. Along the way they searched the wood for mushrooms, and we have a simple lunch. The children naturally enjoyed going out, and these outdoor sessions much more than staying in classroom studying. The glittering airplane we saw up in the sky reminded us for a moment of war, but just for a short time, and we were all in good mood. There wasn't a cloud in the sky, no wind, and everything was quiet around us. All we could hear were birds chirping in the wood. The world seemed to be something in a faraway land that had nothing to do with us. We sang songs as we hiked up the hill, something imitating the birds we heard. Except for the fact that the world was still going on, it was a perfect moment. It was soon after you observed the plane-like object that you went into the woods, correct? That is correct. I'd say less than 5 minutes later that we went in the woods. We left the main trail up the hill and went along a trampled down path and went up the slope of the woods. It was a pretty steep. After we hiked for about 10 minutes, we came to a clearing, a broad area as flat as a tabletop. Once we entered the woods, it was completely still, and when the sun blocked out, it was very chilly. But we never stepped into the clearing. It was like we were in a miniature town square, with the sky bright above us. My class often stopped at this spot wherever we climbed Owanyama. This place had a calming effect and somehow made all of us feel nice and cozy. We took a break once we reached the square, putting down our backpacks, and then the children went into the woods in groups of 3 or 4 in search of mushrooms. I insist that they never lose sight of one another before they set out to the place, but it was woods after all, and if any of them got separated and lost, we'd have a hard time finding them. Still, you have to remember that these are small children, and once they start hunting mushrooms, they tend to forget the rules. So I always make sure that I looked for mushrooms for myself, and I kept an eye on them and running head count. It was about 10 minutes or so after we began hunting mushrooms that the children started to collapse. When I first spotted a group of 3 of them collapse on the ground, I'm sure they eaten a toxic mushroom. There's plenty of highly toxic ones around here, even one that could be fatal. The local kids know which one to not pick, but a few variants are hard to distinguish. That's why I always warn them to never put anything in your mouth until we got back to school and had an expert check them. But you can't always expect children to listen, can you? I raced over to the spot and lifted up the kids who'd fallen to the ground. Their bodies were limp like rubber that's been left out in the sun. I was carrying empty shells. The strength was completely drained out of them, but they were breathing fine. Their pulse was normal, and none of them had a temperature. They looked calm, not at all like they were in any pain. I ruled out that they were stung by bees or snake bites. The children were simply unconscious. The strangest thing was their ears. Their bodies were so limp, it was like they were in a coma, yet their eyes were open, as if they were looking at something. They'd blink every once in a while, so it wasn't like they were asleep. Their eyes moved very slowly from side to side, like they were scanning a distant horizon. Their eyes, at least, were conscious, but there weren't anything to be looked at, or at least nothing visible. I waved my hand a few times in their front of their faces, but got no reaction. I picked up each of the 3 children in turn, and they were all exactly the same. They were all unconscious, their eyes slowly moving from side to side. It was the weirdest thing I'd ever seen. Describe the group that first collapsed. It was a group of girls, 3 girls who were all good friends. I called out their names and slapped them on the cheek, pretty hard in fact, but there was no reaction. They didn't feel anything. It was a strange feeling like touching a void. My first thought was to send someone running back to the school for help, There was no way I could carry three unconscious children on my back, so I started looking for the fastest runner in the class on the boys. But when I stood up and looked around, I saw all the children had collapsed. All 16 of them had fallen to the ground, lost conscious. Only one stood still, conscious and standing. That was me. It was like a battlefield. Did you notice anything unusual at the scene? Any strange smell, sound, light? Think about it for a while. No, as I already said, it was very quiet and very peaceful. No unusual sounds or lights or smells. The only thing unusual was that every single pupil in my class had collapsed and was lying there unconscious. I felt utterly alone, like I was the last person alive on the earth. I can't describe that feeling of total loneliness. I just wanted to disappear into thin air and not think about anything. Of course, I couldn't do that. I had my duties as my teacher, so I pulled myself together, raced down the slope as fast as my legs could carry me to get help. Chapter 3 finished.